I know you're ready because you've already lived your life. So I'm just going to start in with can you tell me a little bit about the career you retired from? And you know I want to hear about this because I followed your career while because who doesn't
I
want to know
love it.
what Kimber Perfect is doing?
Well, I couldn't believe it when you told me that when I first met you, because I had been looking for you my whole life, and here we were in the similar world. So I actually had two careers. My first career was working in my former husband's family business, a meat processing plant. So I actually spent 7 years in a meat processing plant. And I found myself on a Friday, I left my husband, which means I left the job and I left the home. So overnight, I had to figure out with two kids in the car. I literally packed up a car and left. And so I had to quickly figure out my life. And I went to live with my mother temporarily, which was my haven. And so on Saturday was a day of, you know, renewal and jubilation. And Sunday I read the want ads because back in the 80s, that's what you did if you were looking for a job. And I realized I wasn't qualified for anything that was going to support me and my children. And so the following Tuesday, I found myself on the Ohio State University campus. I was seeing a marriage counselor, and it would be my last time seeing that marriage counselor because I was no longer going to be able um, to afford the $50 per session. And he asked me what I wanted to do with my life because I'm sitting there like, what am I going to do? I have these two kids to support. And he said, well, what would you like to do? And I said, well, I really like to go back to school, but I can't do that. And he said, why not? And I said, well, because school takes time and money and I need a job now. And so I literally, he said, you know, might just be able to do it, Kim. You might be able to find a way. I literally got up from that chair. I was on campus, as I said. So I walked across the oval and I went to Denny Hall and I picked up a registration packet and I took it home and I filled it out and I took it back the next day, which was Wednesday. Reminder, I left on Friday. I then took a big coursework book. You know, nothing was on the computer then. And I went through and I knew I wasn't going to be a rocket scientist. And I said to myself, well, you know, you have good people skills. So I decided to major in journalism slash public relations. So I filled that out, turned it in on Thursday. So within 1 week of leaving my husband, I had my plan. That was January 24th, 29th. And I was in school full time March 17th. I had three part-time jobs while I was in school. I went year
Oh,
round.
Kim.
I had gotten some college previously, so I had a few quarters in. I went year round, and in August 24th of 1985, I got my degree. My dog is scratching herself, so I'm going to pick her up.
Hi,
So
Rainey.
anyway, yeah. So anyway, my first job out of college was working for Governor Dick Celeste. I'm so proud of that to this day that I was able and honored to work for him. And so I was a public information officer, and I worked a couple years in that role, and then was promoted to a manager in our tourism division. And then my career just blossomed. I would end up being director of communications at the Limited. It's now L Brands. I went into the nonprofit world. Um, and I was in the nonprofit world for many years until Democrats in my state came back out of the wilderness after 16 years, and Governor Strickland was elected, and I went to work for him for 4 years. And then when he wasn't reelected, I went back into the private sector for several years. Was proud to work for a public affairs, public relations firm, the Worth company here, Sandy Harbrecht, my mentor and a woman I always admired throughout my career. And then I ended up working for her. And then when Mayor Ginther was elected, he hired me as his deputy chief of staff, and I was over communications, marketing, and branding for a city I love, Columbus. So that's my career path.
That's amazing. So, when you made the decision to retire, did you retire from the city of Columbus?
Yes, yes, yes. We were just coming out of COVID. I thought I would work until age 70. I just always kind of had that in my mind. I actually pulled the trigger a couple years early, and I really give credit to that, to a very challenging time for our country and our world, and that's COVID. I never thought I could be at home. I'm a very active person.
I
I mean,
know.
I'm on the go. I wear people out just watching me. And but I learned that I could be at home. I was home working, of course. It was the most challenging and rewarding year of my whole career. So I was fortunate in that regard that I was able to go out feeling really good about myself and my work and my contribution to the world around me. We had amazing teams of people working during COVID to keep this community healthy and alive. And I was part of that work. So it was very rewarding. So in April of 2021, I retired.
How fabulous. I'm
Mm.
going to ask you two questions, but I'm going to separate them. First of all, what you've kind of touched on this, but what was the decision criteria that made you say, okay, now's the time to retire?
So having the financial resources, um, my the biggest advice I can give anybody watching or listening to this podcast is do plan. So I knew I could do it. I met, of course, with Social Security, and the difference between retiring at age 68 and retiring at 70 wasn't a huge difference for me. um, the longer you wait, the better, and it increases. I believe it's 8% each year. Yeah, it doesn't just do a jump from like this age to the next age. It's
Right.
every year, and I had already no, and then that's when I started uh, on Medicare, which was also a wonderful, cost effective move for me. And I have always had really good healthcare coverage. I'm a fortunate American to have had jobs that provided excellent healthcare for me. And the best was actually in my last job. The city of Columbus's benefits were very good. And so I was able to basically not skip a beat going to Medicare from that.
Fabulous. So those were the decisions, or those were the criteria before you retired. And then after you retired, was there anything where you thought, oh, wish I'd thought of this, or I wish someone had said this to me? Or did,
It's interesting because I am one to uh, look back to learn. But in this regard, I'm gonna say I haven't skipped a beat. I remained very active. I honestly thought I would continue to work in some capacity, in some consultancy, and maybe if I had retired at a different time, not having just had that you know, year in COVID where I was drinking from a fire hose every day. So there was some decompression going on. There was also a re-entering of society. I can still remember I hosted two small gatherings for my retirement just for family, and we split it up. I had already started getting my shots because I was in that older age category. Everybody was getting their shots and starting to feel good about going out again. And I also remember my first couple of dinner parties I hosted in my house, which was huge because I'm a very social person. I've always entertained. I host big events, small events. You've attended them, Kathy. And so uh, so I was kind of busy getting back into the world. I have five kids, or two kids, five grandkids. A little slip there. And I've since now I have a great grandchild, and I have another great grandchild on the way. So re-immersing myself with my family and getting back to traveling. We missed a whole ski
oh,
season.
mm,
Um, and so luckily in 2020, we'd gotten our big ski trip out west out of the way the first week of March. Everything changed from March 1st when we left to March 7th when we returned. And so the following winter was the first winter in a couple decades that I hadn't gone to Montana skiing. So
Mm,
getting back, and we did ski that winter,
mm,
but it wasn't, it wasn't the same. We picnicked in the parking lots.
mm.
Um, and yeah, I have pictures of my grandkids sitting on chairs that, we take to tailgates and eating in the parking lot of the ski resort, but no big trip out west that year. So yeah, so it was a reemergence into the world, which I lost my dog during COVID.
Oh, oh.
Bichon I'd rescued of for 14 years. I had her. And so then I waited a year to get another dog. That's Rainey, who you just saw and who Kathy knows. And I rescued her. She was a puppy mill mama. She lived in a
Oh,
cage for 6 years. So I
oh.
got her 5 days after she was rescued from the puppy mill as they were retiring her. And so that was a year into my retirement, which was perfect timing. I didn't want to just jump right in and get another dog right away, in part because I was retiring and I was figuring all this out. I did a lot of nesting. I had
Mm.
bought a house a couple years. I bought my dream home a couple years, my forever home, a condominium. And so I did a lot of nesting, fixing up my home and shopping and yeah. And so I was busy. I was busy. I don't, if I had any regrets, I don't recall any.
Yeah, no, I know you. Definitely no regrets. That's for sure. And I see you as just extraordinarily active, and that's so inspirational for everyone. But I do believe I also see you as an activist. And
Hmm.
tell me how, or tell me about maybe finally the freedom to be able to really pursue those activist
Hmm.
opportunities that you have.
Right. Well, it's not just the freedom, but the motivation. It's a lot of motivation. I've always been motivated in this way. I'm a product of the 60s. I graduated from high school in 1970. Um, you know, product of the tumultuous 60s. I guess every generation probably can say that, but I certainly felt it as I came into adulthood. The civil rights movement impacted me, the women's movement. I mean, I became a feminist as a young adult and am committed to that today. The Stonewall riots, the Voting Rights Act that just was 60 years ago last week, um, the Native American movement, which really got underway in the early 1970s. All of those things impacted me as a young adult. And then when I was 20, Congress passed the 26th Amendment, which lowered the voting age from age 21 to 18. So at age 20, I was able to vote in 1972 in my first presidential year. And I got the vote out for George McGovern and I pushed my little 2-month-old daughter in a stroller in my neighborhood. Back then, you knocked on every door. I mean, I was official. I had a little tag from Common Cause, Ohio, but it wasn't strategic like it is today when you might be talking to persuasion voters and then as the election gets closer, you're talking to your diehard supporters. But so I knocked on every door with her in a little stroller. And to this day, I tell her, you helped get the vote out for the presidential candidate that lost in the biggest landslide in America's history. But a good man and someone I was really proud to support. I thought the world would end if Richard Nixon was reelected, and little did I know Donald Trump would be in my future. So then Watergate happened, and I was again home with this baby, and I was just fascinated by, I read all the transcripts of Richard Nixon once the Supreme Court made him release them. Um, Watched all the hearings in Washington, D.C. live. They were live on all three networks.
Oh,
Uh,
Kim, I was 14 and I was so mad that they took up all the programming that summer. I had nothing to do. I was too young to work, and all that was on TV was Watergate.
this cracks me up. It tells you, I mean, I am older than you, and it shows you the difference because I was so grateful to have something other than the soap operas to watch. But it really got me interested in civics and public affairs and just that whole world. And so it wasn't surprising, when I would go years later, go work for Ohio's Governor Dick Celeste. So yeah, I've always been getting out the vote. I've always been standing my ground. As Joyce Vance said yesterday on a podcast I was listening to, she said, democracy is a participatory sport. And when she said that, I thought, I've lived that participatory sport my whole
Mhm.
life. And I had a high school civics teacher my senior year, Chuck Kessler, who really also helped. And he and I had opposing views. He was more conservative. I was a liberal even in high school, and I was in a small town, a rural town, Johnstown, Ohio. So I can remember the day after Kent State standing up to him, because Kent State happened when I was a senior, my last year of high school, my last month of high school, May 4th, 1970. And I still remember him coming in, and this really helped me frame my own worldview, because he said if those students um, didn't agree with the school's policies, they shouldn't have gone there. And I stood up and I said, Mr. Kessler, if that if everybody thought like that, we'd all still be living in the Stone Age. I still remember standing up, and I was a shy teenager. Um, and I ran out of the room crying,
Oh, oh my
which,
gosh.
was maybe, but four people had died. So, but
Yeah.
I credit him because every day he came into class, 5 days a week, we never opened the book. We had discourse around, politics and society, and he would lead the discussion. But it was a participatory sport. Even in that class, we talked about civic engagement and so forth. So I give Mr. Kessler, who recently passed, credit there, where credit is certainly due. So yeah, so always, I once I retired, I was able to be a poll worker, because I was able to. I always took the day off work, but I would spend it getting out the vote or calling voters and things like that. But now I could do that leading up to the election more freely. Not that I didn't do it before, but so like last fall, I worked 8 weeks in a row, uh, getting the vote out for Kamala Harris and Sherrod Brown, 8 weekends or weekdays. And it was interesting because I felt a lot of enthusiasm in September, and people couldn't wait for October 8th for early voting to start. But then I kind of felt a sense of defeat even before the election each week.
Really?
I got a sense from our voters there, and I was speaking to the choir,
Oh,
that yeah, I'm going to vote, but I mean, it was almost like this man is just taking over. And so that was a little disheartening. And then I was a poll worker, and only a third of our registered voters in our precinct came out to vote. And and that included early voting. I
oh,
stood the first day of early voting, which was October 8th. I did poll standing, passing out sample ballots. And by 1 o'clock, I didn't have anything to do. There were so few voters.
oh my
By
gosh,
1
Kim.
p.m., I mean, Sherrod had a rally, which I went to. It was right there, and that helped get some people there. But finally, I think by 2, I showed up like early in the morning, like around 8, 7:38, something like that. And I was busy in the morning, and then I had planned to stay till around 5, but I ended up leaving because it was so quiet, and other people came to do. It wasn't like I deserted the post. They really weren't expecting me all day, but I was expecting a mad rush.
Yeah.
Disappointing. This is a participatory sport, people.
Absolutely.
Disappointing.
Absolutely. So, so here we are. Tell me what you're
Hmm.
doing now, because I think this is interesting
All right.
too. Just all the things that you're doing to keep talking about where we are and where we need to be in the future in terms of
Yeah.
politics.
So using my voice wherever I can. I just did the Hands Across High Street. I've got my sign, and I'm protesting when I can do it, and happy to do that. I definitely will start gearing up. I'm thrilled about Sherrod's announcement. I'm definitely going to be working not just for this cycle, but next year's cycle is critically important. And I hope people feel the urgency because I feel everybody's too complacent. Um, I think people are too focused on themselves and
Mm,
they're not
mm,
thinking enough outside of themselves. And I'm
mhm,
talking about everybody here. Um, Amelia Robinson, who I respect so much. She's the opinion page editor at the Columbus Dispatch. She recently asked a question on social media, what does democracy mean to you? And I put something like um, being committed to something outside of yourself.
mm,
I have friends who supported the big beautiful bill. I even hate saying the name because it's such an ugly, horrible bill. But but they have money, they have means, and because it
mm,
doesn't harm them, it actually benefits them. But what about all the people it does harm? They have more than enough for their needs. So
mhm,
why do they need this extra, that's adding trillions to our debt? Um, that is going to impact my posterity and yours.
mhm,
And all these people who are going to lose their healthcare coverage. I mean, I think it's a travesty. So I think speaking up, I'm using my social media platforms. I recently submitted an op-ed to the Dispatch. I don't know if they'll run it, but so trying to use my voice in any way I can.
Have
So
you ever thought of running for office?
I have because mainly, well, obviously a commitment to the cause, but I also thought, who's not going to vote? I could be the worst candidate in the world. Who's not going to vote for Kim Perfect? But no, I those days are behind me. I admire you,
Thank
for
you.
your service, Kathy, and I'm just so proud of you for what you're doing to serve the community. But no, that I'm not interested in running for office at this point in my life. But I admire anyone who is of a certain age like me and is doing it. I think it's great. I'm 1 month older than Sherrod Brown, and I admire him so much for jumping back into the fight. Exactly 1 month older to the
Oh my
day.
gosh.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's what when you're an elected official, everybody knows your birthday. But yeah, so and I'm so proud of him. And Connie. I mean, this is and I think he has a tremendous opportunity here. Just tremendous. So and we need him at leading the ticket statewide for sure next
Oh,
year.
I admire anyone. It's exhausting. And so especially for those of us who are in our official retirement years to be choosing to do that, it's amazing and obviously very much a passion project. Um, so you've mentioned a couple of times, I'm changing a little bit, but don't let me, you know, don't take this as now we're not talking about that anymore. You've mentioned health a couple of times. I'm
Mhm.
curious what you do to stay so healthy and vibrant.
Wow. Very active. I'm a lifelong cyclist. I've now been cycling since 1974. Lifelong skier. Started skiing in 1972. Still at it. Season pass holder. It's no trail. Still go out west
Oh
every
my gosh.
winter. Lifelong hiker.
Mm,
Um, and I haven't cycled much this summer because it's been a little hot, and I do have some restrictions health wise when it comes to the heat. And not, I mean, not that I couldn't work around it, but anyway, I'm very busy. I belong to a gym. I don't go that often. I walk my dog every morning and every evening. And I remember years ago when I told my general practitioner doctor that I walked my dog daily. I've never had a yard. You know, 20 years I've had a dog. I've never had a yard. I live in a condo. There's no yard, so I have to walk them. Rainey and I go to a park every single day, sometimes twice a day. And so, but that's more of a stroll than a really good hike. I like to organize family hikes. I like to organize hikes with my friends. I have one girlfriend, we walk every week pretty religiously. And so that's we meet at a park somewhere. So, but I think the main thing I do is I keep moving. I made business cards for
Oh,
myself when I retired. I don't know if I ever showed it to you, but on the front it
I
has
love
my
it.
my new title, activist and adventurer, but on the back it says never stop moving. So this never stop moving is my mantra. I was out there, dragging hoses across my condominium complex yesterday, pulling weeds in the heat, getting, sprinklers going, anything to keep, and, people, my neighbors say, "Oh, Kim, we can," no, 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 I like doing it. I need to
Hmm.
keep moving. So and I've always been very healthy in terms of my eating habits. I don't smoke. As a young person, like all of us from the 60s, I smoked, but I haven't smoked since 1978. So I think I'm clear there, at least hopefully. I do like my wine, and I'm sure my doctor would prefer I drink less wine. But overall, I've had two doctors tell me, well, I had one doctor tell me I'm walking and I'm breathing because of who I am, and that's the whole mind over body thing. But recently I had a doctor tell me, I was doing some pre-admission testing, and she said you are similar to what he said, but he attributed to my overall she attributed to my overall good health. She said you are walking and you are breathing because of your overall good health, and that's because I've been hit by a car and rendered a paraplegic, so that's where the walking thing comes in. I have 8 rods in my back. I was, med flighted to Wexner Medical Center from Lake Erie, where I had emergency surgery with two neurosurgeons who put Humpty Dumpty back together again. But one of those two neurosurgeons had advised my family that I might be in a wheelchair the rest of my life and I might be on a catheter the rest of my life. They were not
Kim,
happy hearing that.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that
and
one.
so well, that was 10 months before the sudden cardiac arrest. So we had that, and I had just come back from that, had just been on my bike 6 days in a row training for Pelotonia, where I went plop on a downtown sidewalk and stopped breathing. I suffered sudden cardiac arrest. And I'm that classic chain of survival story. Everything worked perfect. Somebody calls 911, somebody starts compressions. EMS got there in about 9 minutes, which those first several minutes are very critical when I had no pulse. I was not breathing. So they got me to Grant Hospital, where I again suffered cardiac arrest. And I will tell you, I would come to find out that the people at Grant really didn't think I was going to make it. My family was greeted by the hospital chaplain when they arrived. So I am, obviously resilient, and I like when this doctor who recently said that to me, she'd only just met me. And but she, there was a lot of tests beforehand and everything, a lot of conversations beforehand with other people on her team. And so it was kind of interesting that she came to that conclusion having just met me. And the other doctor who said it, Dr. Nimji, Shai Nimji, great, great, great surgeon at Wexner Medical Center. He is why I'm walking. And Dr. Arnie Good, who was at Grant Hospital, Ohio Health at the time, is why I'm breathing. So Dr. Good and his wife, I will run into at protests. And the last time I ran into him and his lovely wife, I went up to him. I go, "It's always so fun to run into the man who saved your life."
and
And to
and if
know that he's an activist like me, it's really also wonderful to
and
see.
if you don't mind saying how old you were when that happened,
64. I was
and
64.
then,
63 when I was hit by the car, and I was 64 when I suffered cardiac arrest. And so that was 4 years before I retired. And the health didn't have anything to do with it because I came back fully. Health, my health
wow,
had nothing to do with my decision to retire. I was I was fine. I was living a full life. I had
yeah,
gotten back. I had to take after the car hit me. I was on my bike, by the way, when the car hit me. I had the right of way. Um, and he felt bad. He really felt bad. This is later that year. So he hit me in July. In December, I was able to testify before the Ohio Senate for the 3-foot law that then passed out of committee and passed in the Senate and in the House. Not that I was the big hero, because there were some really good people who worked on getting that legislation passed over 7 years. So it's the statewide law requiring drivers to give bicyclists 3 feet when you pass them. And that law had existed in Columbus for many years and other big cities. Ottawa County, where I was struck by the motorist, uh, he was able to go into the courthouse while I was still in the hospital. It was like 4 or 5 days after he hit me, and plead guilty to unassured clear distance, and he paid a $35 fine. Now, I'm assuming if he'd killed me, it might have been a more challenging consequence for him, but that would not be the case today. But that's because Ottawa County didn't have the 3-foot law. And he saw an oncoming car, he saw me, and he decided there was room for all, so he plowed right through. His words, not mine. And when I had to drag myself off the highway, and when I got to the side of the road, I saw his side view mirror from the passenger side of his car, that when it struck me, it broke off the car, and it was laying there beside me on the side of the road. And I was basically, didn't know it at the time, but I knew I couldn't get up, and I had spinal cord damage
Oh,
from a
oh
broken
my
back
gosh.
where the splinters pushed into my spinal cord. So the doctors pulled those splinters back, and that's why I have 8 rods in my back that I don't even know are there. So thank God for modern medicine. I'm alive and I'm walking because of modern medicine. So yeah, and a good healthcare
Oh,
system in our country,
great
which is
healthcare
why we
system.
have to make certain everybody has access to it. I had coverage.
Yeah.
These two
Yeah.
incidents didn't cost me anything. I just had to have heart surgery in March, and I had to pay $350 when I arrived. And guess what? That money was refunded to me. It
Oh
was
my
a
gosh.
nearly, it was a nearly, it was like $170,000 surgery that was
Oh,
covered for me. So everybody deserves that. And
yeah.
and I am well aware every day that not everybody has access to that. And people are dying.
Hmm.
People are dying because they don't have access to good health care. And
Hmm.
what this big beautiful bill just did is strip away from uh, over 500,000 Ohioans alone, just in our
Oh,
state alone.
mm.
So remember that, folks, when you go to vote.
Yes. Well,
Remember who voted to pass that legislation.
yes, yes. And so one aspect of your health journey you kind of touched on, but I want to dive into a little more because what I'm finding as I'm aging now at 66 is it just takes longer to get better. And it's so important, I think, for the message to be don't stop, keep doing physical therapy, keep moving, as you keep saying. And I mean, it sounds like after your accident, you came back so quickly, I'll say. And then to have the electrical system stop on you, but for other people, I'll say, Kim, not so much for you, but it takes a while. And I think people need to be really patient with themselves to get
Mhm.
better. I'm guessing that was one of the hardest parts for you, being patient and
Uh,
getting better.
n- not the
No?
first go around, because, like, for example, I was in physical therapy in February after the guy had hit me, and I got sign off to ride a bike again.
Oh,
And
wow.
within 15 minutes, I was on a bike. Literally because I wanted to get a towny bike, and I was really close to Roll on Lane Avenue. And so I just drove right to Roll, and I test drove a bike, and I bought it. I had a
Wow.
really nice road bike, but I really, to get out there and just tool around,
Yeah.
initially I wanted to have a towny bike, which is what I bought. Um, okay, so I came home from the hospital after the heart stuff, and this is after surgery because I have a device. So I got home on a Tuesday. It had happened the previous Thursday. That Saturday, I said to my son, "Oh, this drives my children crazy." I said I want to go to the Pride March, and and it was literally a block from where I was living, and I wasn't going to walk. It was 90 degrees already. It's like 9 o'clock
Mm.
in the morning. It's really hot already. And he said no, and I said, well, if you don't drive me there, I'm going to walk. So he, of course, was forced to drive me there. And I didn't march, but I had organized the city team and we had a couple hundred
Mm.
people there. And by golly, I was going to go see my mayor and see my colleagues and say so. I put on a pride shirt and I happened to run into Officer Fletcher Farr, and one of my colleagues pointed out because I I had already previously met Fletcher Farr, but I was lying on a sidewalk and not breathing when I met him. But he had was on the scene. He was a downtown bicycle police officer, and he saw my mayor's office badge, and so he called Jerome, the mayor's head of security, and said, "Jerome, I don't think she's going to make it."
No.
And so I have a picture from the 2017 Pride March. Officer Fletcher Farr looking at me like he has just seen a ghost, and
Oh.
he is so excited to see me alive. And I something to remember if y'all ever have the misfortune to meet EMS personnel wherever you are. I mean, I went and thanked everybody.
Hmm.
I took food to the engine house. There were three engine houses that responded, their EMS teams. And so all three were invited to Engine House number one, which is right downtown, and they were the first to get to me. And we broke bread. I got pictures, and the Columbus Division of Fire does a really good job of bringing survivors together with the men and women that help save their lives. So they do an annual lunch, in which I couldn't go to this year because I was out of town, but it's really a nice opportunity and they always make certain you get a chance to get your picture taken. But I'd already done that. Plus, they came to see me in the hospital. Two or
Oh.
three of my lifesavers, because when I met them at the engine house, when I went to break bread with them, I said, "Yeah, I know you've already met me once," and they said, "Actually, twice. We came to your hospital room." So yeah, so that was really nice of them. But if you have a chance to go, pop in and say thank you, because they don't always know the outcome once they drop you off at the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
They usually don't know the outcome.
Hmm.
So yeah, so let him know you're doing great and you appreciate, So anyway, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So no,
Oh
I
my gosh.
didn't have. I Now I will say this: I had surgery. So that was then. This is now, 8 years later. I had surgery this spring. I got a new device and I got a replacement lead. It was kind of a major deal. And it did take me a little bit longer to recuperate. But I had my little dog to sit
Mm.
on my lap and lay next to me, and I got a lot of reading done. And I live in a three-story home, so I have to move.
Yep.
And I would say that that's the other thing about recovery. Like I heard when I went to cardiac rehab that a lot of people are afraid to go.
Hmm.
And going to it makes you better. They've got you hooked up to all these monitors. You're going to get on that treadmill. All these professionals are around you. And so don't be, I remember at the time I went, it was like 65% go. So there's a lot of people who don't go who really need to go. And I took all the classes. I took the food classes. They had me meet with a psychologist, although because it's all part of the package, right? And at the end of my hour, she just looks across at me and she just goes, "You're fine. You don't need me," because there are some people who might need to keep talking to somebody. Well, I talk all the time, so I don't need that in my life.
Oh my gosh, I'm not surprised at all. So, another thing that you've done is probably somewhere close to 2.5 or 3 years ago. Somehow your heart said to you, you have relatives you haven't seen in 60
Oh my
years.
God.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. I'm going to
I'm gonna
start crying.
cry now.
I wasn't sure if I was even going to bring it up, but it's just so much a part of your
Oh.
story and it's so much a part of who you are. How did that happen? I mean, feel
Well,
free
we
to
have to
tell the
credit
story.
yeah, well, we have to credit. First of all, I've been looking for my Xanon cousins my whole life. Kathy's father was my first cousin. He was my oldest first cousin. I'm one of 23 first cousins on my mom's side. He was born in 1931. I was born in 1952. And you
Isn't that
know,
funny?
for I know. And I have cousins, well, I have first cousins born in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. So I'm very blessed in that way. And, to have known all of them and now my cousin Ray's children. So I thought when I went to the city, I'd come across a Xanon at the city. I was always looking for the Xanon name. And then my cousin Diana went on Ancestry and connected with your brother and our cousin Diana. And so so I hosted y'all. I hosted you at my house with a couple other cousins, and it just went from there. We didn't want to ever leave each other again. And it's been such a blessing in my life to have you all my life. I just love it. But what was really funny was, and Kathy knows this story, that I looking for the Xanons all my life. And the Wednesday before we were all gathering at my house, Morgan Zanin did I had had a ski accident and I had skier's thumb. I had to have thumb surgery on my hand, and I was getting an ultrasound done on my hand. And this delightful woman was doing my ultrasound. We just chatted, and I still remember was at Wexner Medical Center, and the badge was turned backwards. And for somebody who'd been looking all of her life for Xanon, had that badge been turned around, I would have seen Xanon and of course made the connection to your brother, Richard Kent. And so then we posted on Facebook a few days later, and I get this message from Morgan saying, I'm the one who did your, and I'm like, oh my gosh, all
Yeah.
with 4 days earlier, I had a Xanon right in front of me and didn't know it. And so thankfully it all worked out that I got to know you all. And of course, you're so great about having everybody come together. You're like me, you bring
Yeah.
everybody together, and
Yep.
not that your other siblings don't, but I know you in particular do, and I do, and not that my other siblings don't either. So it's been
Yeah.
a blessing. It's been a so yeah, never give up on finding people. And of course there's so many tools for that. So yeah, it's
Y-
great.
it's so funny because the internet is a blessing and a curse. Social media is a blessing and a curse. And I, it brought us together. So that's wonderful.
Hmm.
And just real quickly for anyone listening, back in 1959, when my mother was pregnant with me, my father went into the hospital to get sinus surgery. He did come home from the hospital, but unfortunately, he had contracted cerebral meningitis when he was in the hospital. He went back in to the hospital. He was in a coma, in and out of a coma. My mother assures everyone that comas on TV are nothing like comas in real life. But he was in a coma for 6 weeks. And when he came out of it, he was mentally and physically disabled. He was about the equivalent of a 10-year-old, is what my mother always said. And for a lot of reasons, the families split apart. And I never knew my Italian relatives. And I just am so excited to have to get to know the other side of the family. I'm so thankful for the Gerholds, my mother's family. We lived with them for 4 years, Kim. I don't know if you knew that. And they got my mom
Hmm.
through college, and my mom was a school teacher as she was raising us. But there was always that question, and so to have that side of our life so filled with so many amazing people, and I'm so thankful. And then to find out that my cousin's Kimber Perfect, this woman I'd been watching my whole career was communications. And I thought, wow, that Kimber Perfect gets to do everything. She's got all the coolest jobs. And,
Oh my
your
goodness.
name was in the public because you had to be a spokesperson or a public
Hmm.
communications person. And then
Hmm.
here you are, my cousin. So it's amazing. It really is.
And
Well,
you would walk by my sister's antique store. I mean,
yes, with the
all of
same
it
name.
was.
I mean, I
Is
was born Mary Catherine, and I was always like, "Oh, I'm named for that." No idea I was related.
it's been
Oh,
a blessing for sure. And I loved my cousin Raymond, and I didn't see him in his I spent a lot of time with him growing up because my mom and my Aunt Mary spent a lot of time with him. And he would come to my house for Thanksgiving dinners, and I always loved him. And I didn't know him before he got sick. I don't
mm.
remember him before he got sick, but that might be because he was married to your mom and having all these babies. And
All they did.
I don't remember any of well, I don't remember any of my older cousins from the 30s from that time.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I've gotten to know almost everybody as we all have grown older and gotten closer to some, including all the Xanans, and so that's been really fun.
So, it's we're kind of winding down, but I definitely don't want to end this with what's next. Do you
Oh,
have anything
well,
else?
so I just got back from England a few weeks ago, and I'm leaving
Oh,
for Ireland next week.
oh,
And then I'm already planning so travel, because you have to plan your travel. I've already booked Montana.
right,
So
right.
there definitely will be the kids are all excited about another season of skiing. I do family ski day. And believe it or not, I know it's hot outside, but it'll be here before we know it. And
Oh,
I make food, and I'm always adding to my picnic stuff. So this year I've really upped my game for family ski day in terms of the picnicking. I started writing my life story a couple weeks ago. I was was with a friend, and she asked me a simple question: how'd you land on your college major? And 20 minutes later, she looked at me and she goes, "You really should write this stuff down." And when I walk my dog in the mornings in the park, I'm thinking about things, and I've been thinking about these storylines from my life. So then I had lunch with a girlfriend, and she said, "I think I'll invest in some headphones." And we started talking about it, and so we started coming up with some of my storylines and some of my chapter titles. And so I literally went home and wrote chapter one. It was less than 2 hours. I wrote chapter one. I'll send it to you, Kathy. I'll send it to
oh my gosh.
and so now I've been busy planning for the trip next week. So but I've done this kind of outline, and I shared chapter one with a friend of mine who's an author, a published author. She's an excellent author. And I shared it with her yesterday, and she gave me some good feedback yesterday. And so I'm going to take her feedback. She, really liked the piece. But so anyway, so I think getting my story down needs to happen next. And what my other friend who I had lunch with that day, she said, you really could push this out there, um, and kind of, curate it out there. And so she got me thinking about that. And so actually chapter one that I submitted to the dispatch is basically what I submitted to the dispatch because it converted so easily. I took away the transition line to chapter two and just added a paragraph or two.
Ah,
And so I guess that's probably my next big thing, is getting that story down, not for publication. This is just for my own, but well, for publication, if it can be helpful. Like 4 years ago, I wrote something that the dispatch put on the front page, and that was about the cardiac arrest. And it was about, I mean, there was a story there, but it was also about encouraging bystander participation. Taking
mm, mm.
After I got out of the hospital, I took a 4-hour CPR class. Being at the ready, see something, do something. And so that was the point of that piece. And I was really appreciative of the dispatch running that. So if there are things like, maybe my going back to school story as a single mom with school age kids could be helpful to somebody. So maybe that chapter is going to be pushed out there in some way. I haven't fleshed it all out. I just started writing. I mean, I literally, it's so easy to just write your own story.
and so important to leave a legacy. And I hope that this podcast can be part of that because this has been so enjoyable. I have loved getting to know you better. And as you do the chapters, maybe we'll do videos of you for the chapters that you can then put on your website with your book.
Well, we'll see how interesting my chapters are. People are always saying, "Oh, you really should write your life story." And I'm like, do people really want to read about me, but if I can do it in the context like I did 4 years ago, that I hope was helpful I know it encouraged a lot of people to take CPR because my friends told me that it did. This piece is about America today. It's my story, but it's about America today. The piece
Hmm.
I submitted to the Dispatch, and I'm extremely concerned about my country as we approach our 250th anniversary next year. So wake up, people.
And I was going to ask, what would you want people to know? I think you've said it, but if you want to say it one more time, I think I know what you're going to say. What do you want people to know? What do you want people to do?
Roy Vance's words, democracy is a participatory sport.
It
And also
absolutely is.
think of something outside yourself. I mean, we all have busy lives. We all have to take care of ourselves and our families and our pets. But what else are you doing that is outside of yourself that is
Hmm.
make the world a better place?
Oh, fabulous.
Miss Rumphius, that book, remember that children's book, Miss Rumphius?
No.
Go read Miss Rumphius. It takes place in Maine. I'll send you a link to it, Kathy. It's
Okay.
a great story, and it was my children and grandchildren's favorite book. That and I have to give credit to The Giving Tree too.
Oh,
Yeah, Miss Rumphius.
great. I can't wait to read it.